Hey guys, thanks for checking out PowerPlayPickz. Today we're going to go through UFC 277, Pena versus Nunes 2. We're coming off a pretty significant loss on the last card. We'll look to rebound on this one. First fight, we have Orion Kosha versus Mike Matheda, aka Blood Diamond. Looking at this fight and the data, you'll see Kosha has the most likely event with KO at nearly 33%. So definitely a good chance of happening. He has, I believe, 7 of his 8 wins are knockouts, and 1 is by submission. So he always finishes the fight. And his only loss was against Philip Rowe. That was a second round knockout, and Rowe's a tough opponent. He's got pretty big reach advantage there, so not surprising he got the knockout. Mike Matheda, on the other hand, or Blood Diamond, his first UFC fight, he faced Jeremiah Wells, got submitted late in the first round, I believe, and he didn't really get to show off anything. So hard to say what type of fight, how good of a fighter he really is. We know he trains with Israel Adesanya, so pretty good group of guys he trains with anyway. So when we look at their money line range and what profitable bets we'll be looking at, definitely have to go with Kosha's KO. There is a little bit of value on his submission, but I think what's propping up this number is that Blood Diamond's his loss was by submission, so entering that into the data is going to put up Orion's submission numbers. So we're going to focus on Kosha's KO, and probably in the late rounds, in his last 2 wins, they were round 3 finishes. So it seems like moving up in competition, he's probably going to finish the fight later. But still not a ton of data on this guy to be very certain in that. Blood Diamond, on the other hand, he usually does. He's only got 3 wins, and he's finished 1 by KO, submission, and decision. So he's all around there. Kosha's only loss was by KO, so that's why we see Blood Diamond's KO numbers pretty high there, nearly 30%. When we look at the lines on this fight, given Blood Diamond's money line range, we're going to be looking at his most valuable prop, which happens to be submission, and it is a long shot prop, but he does have 1 win by submission, and even though it was against a low level guy, I think it was probably their first professional fight, so we can definitely understand why the odds are so high. I think it's at plus 3,000. So the most likely event is definitely Kosha KO, and that's probably what's going to happen, but we will take a flyer on Blood Diamond by submission. Next fight, Nick Negro Moreno and Ior Potieria. Pretty tough names to pronounce. Ior is making his UFC debut. He did win a contract on the UFC Contender Series. He won that fight by KO in the first round. Now he's got a pretty big step up in competition. Not that Nick is, the best fighter in the division, but he's definitely got more experience in the UFC. When we look at this fight, we're going to see Nick's KOs at nearly 30%, so definitely a good chance of this happening. On the flip side, Ior's most likely event is KO, but his submission is pretty close too. And when we look at our long-term profitable plays, what we're going to be focusing on, definitely have to look at that Nick's KO. A lot of value on that. And with Ior, we have some decision making to do here. His most likely event is KO. That is long-term his most profitable play, but there is some slight profit on the submission. However, I think I'll fade the submission and just focus on the KO. There's very limited tape on this guy, so hard to say what he's going to do. And if you look at his the record of his past opponents, they're all scrubs basically. The guy he did fight in Contender Series was 8-0, so that was a pretty good win. So it's going to be an interesting fight to see. Definitely, I don't want to have too much money on this fight, so probably just focus on both by KO and see what happens. Next fight, Kim versus Edwards. Women's MMA, as you can see by the numbers, this one is most likely going the distance. I have Kim decision at 30%, Edwards decision at nearly 34%. So really good chance of this getting there. If you look at their fight tape, most of their fights have gone to decision in the UFC. However, there is going to be some value on the Kim submission. It's sitting at around plus 1,300 right now, and she's finished 3 fights by submission, so there's definitely a possibility it gets there. She's lost her last 3 fights, so if she's smart, she doesn't want this to get to the judges, or she'll be 0-4, probably get cut. Edwards, on the other hand, the only play for her is going to be decision based on her current money line range. So we won't have too much money on this fight. We'll definitely be on both by decision, and probably going to take a flyer on the Kim submission as well. Next fight, Morales versus Fugit. This should be a slam dunk for Morales. He's 13-0 right now. He made an impressive debut, getting the knockout. I think it was against Trevin Giles. And he's definitely going to have a reach advantage here. 10 of his 13 wins are by knockout. That's why this number is so high. And I don't think you need to look into this fight anymore, really. Fugit's making his debut. The only bet you would make on Fugit is by decision, but I don't think it's necessary. I'll be looking at Morales KO rounds 1 and 2, and there is some slight value on his decision at the current line, but I don't think it gets there. Next fight, Close and Garcia. This should be a pretty good fight. Off the top of my head, just watching fight film on these guys, Garcia does get gassed, and I think Close is going to get a knockout in either rounds 2 or 3. You will see his decision number is very high there at 44%, so we definitely got to take a look at that as well. Garcia, on the other hand, his most likely event is submission, and his last fight was one of the biggest bets I've hit since I started betting on UFC. I got him to win by 2nd round submission. I think it was against Jesse Ronson, and I think the 2nd round submission line was plus 2,200, something crazy like that. So it was nice to hit. And when we look at their money lines, we know that based on my system, Close, his KO is definitely live, and we're going to take his decision. And Garcia, we're going to be taking his submission, nearly 12% value on that one. That's his most valuable prop. And we'll also take decision just in case, but it seems like when Garcia goes the distance, he loses the fight. Next fight, we got another guy debuting in the heavyweight division against Dontel Mays. He's only got 3 pro fights, all of them by knockout. That's why you'll see such a high number here. We definitely have to take him by KO if you're gonna be betting his side. If you're just fading him, then only look at Mays by KO. And there's limited fight tape on Hamdy, and he hasn't fought high-level opponents, so I think he's in tough here. I wouldn't bet his money line. The only prop worth betting is knockout if he can get Mays out of there in the 1st round. If Mays doesn't get caught, I think you'll see a late KO like he did to Parisian his last fight. And yeah, looking at our numbers here, Mays, they're given his least valuable prop is KO. That's what the bookies think is going to happen, and they are giving you a lot of value on the handy KO because they want you to bet it. So if you're getting in the mind of the bookies, they're thinking Mays is going to win this and get the KO. But I will say, looking at history of lines and fights, Hamdy by KO is worth a bet. You never know what can happen if he catches him. Anything's possible. Next fight, Drew Dober, Rafael Alves. Drew Dober's most likely event is going to be the decision at 22%. His KO is pretty close at 16%. We saw in Dober's last fight, he overcame some adversity early against Terrence McKinney and ended up turning the tide, finishing him with ground and pound in the first round. So big win for Dober. He can take a lot of damage. I don't see him losing this fight. When we look at Dober's profitable long-term bets in his money line range, we're going to be looking at KO for sure. And because his most likely event is decision, we'll be taking that. And the only bet on Alves, it's going to be his most valuable prop, which is currently decision. So I think I'm only going to have the one bet there. His submission is nearly 20%. There is a chance he does hit it. When Dober loses, most of his losses are by submission. So there's a chance, but I don't see it happening. Next fight, Morono-Semelsberger. This is a pretty close fight in my opinion. I definitely agree that Semelsberger should be the favorite. I see a lot of people on Twitter betting his money line, and I understand why. He's got a slight reach advantage. The thing with Morono is he has a lot more experience and a lot more UFC experience, so you can't count him out. I will say, given his money line, the profitable long-term money line bet at that range is Morono, and he's also got the most likely event with decision. Semelsberger, his KO is his most likely event, and his decision is also pretty high too. So we could see this one go the distance. Looking at profitable long-term bets, Morono in this range, his most valuable prop is profitable long-term. So I'm going to be looking at the submission for sure. I definitely think the most likely outcome is, if he wins, is going to be by decision, but his submission's at plus 1,700. Semelsberger, his profitable bets are going to be KO and decision as well. I think if this fight ends, it will be in the first 2 rounds. And if it doesn't end in the first 2 rounds, most likely it'll get to the judges. Oh, another thing I will say about this fight, where Semelsberger has the reach advantage, I don't think Morono is going to stand and bang with him. I think the best thing for him to do is try to get the submission. He does have a few submissions on his record. However, that being said, probably not going to happen. We saw in Semelsberger's last fight against AJ Fletcher that he does have a good ground game, and he was able to stop a really good wrestler and get the decision. So I'll be taking a flyer on Morono's submission, probably in rounds 1 and 2. Understandable if you are going to bet him to just take decision. Next fight, Ankalaev, Anthony Smith. Really good fight here. Ankalaev's a heavy favorite. Usually when we see guys this heavy of a favorite, they are going to win, and it's not that I'm going to bet his money line. Personally, I don't think it's worth it, but history shows that it's still a profitable bet if you do. But I don't like to lay that much juice on this bet. This fighter, especially given Anthony Smith has overcome a lot in his career. He's on a nice win streak. Everybody's always looking to fade him, and he comes out with the wins. So definitely can't count him out here. He's a capable finisher. We saw in Ankalaev's last fight against Santos that he got caught, and he could have been finished if Santos was more aggressive in the fight. But so we know Ankalaev is not indestructible. Smith could definitely catch him, could get him down on the ground if he's rocked and sink another submission. He's been doing that of late. Looking at the numbers in the fight, Ankalaev KO is the most likely event. His decision is close, only about less than a 1% difference there. And for Smith, we know that he mostly finishes his fights, and as you can see, KO and sub are very close here. When we're looking at long-term profitability, the only plays here are Ankalaev by knockout and decision. Long term, you're not going to make any money on Anthony Smith at his current money line range. That being said, given his history, given his experience, I think it might be worth a bet to take inside the distance in rounds 1 and 2, just because he is a capable finisher and he could catch Ankalaev. But I think Ankalaev gets the win here, and I think it's most likely going to go the distance, but we'll see. Next fight, flyweight division, Pantoja and Perez. Most likely event here is going to be Perez decision, 28%, and Pantoja's most likely event is submission. I think this is a really good fight, and it is going to go all 3 rounds. I don't think Pantoja is going to finish Perez. Perez is a tough guy. So with this fight, when we look at the numbers and their money line range, the profitable bets for this are going to be Pantoja decision and Perez decision. So I think I'm only going to have 2 bets on this. I may bet the Perez money line. Seems to be going up. Last I looked, it's at plus 170. So who knows? It could get to could get up to plus 180, plus 185 by tomorrow. Next fight, Lewis Pavlovich, heavyweights throwing down. You can never count out Derek Lewis. The line's moving in favor of Pavlovich. He definitely has the most likely event with nearly 47% chance at the KO. Derek Lewis with 37%. Personally, in my opinion, I'm going to be on the Lewis money line. I think he's got more experience here. He's coming off a loss. He's gonna want to finish Pavlovich. Pavlovich hasn't fought a guy of this caliber, and with the knockout power, I think he might get caught here. Looking at their long-term profitable bets, we're getting a bit of value on the Derek Lewis KO, which is great, and that is going to be a profitable bet over time. Pavlovich, on the other hand, we're going to be looking at his KO, of course. I think this gets finished in the first couple of rounds. I have seen some people looking at Lewis by decision. He does have 4 decision wins, I think. Pretty much any time it goes the distance, he does win. So that's a possibility too. Wouldn't count it out, but most likely somebody's going to sleep in the first couple of rounds. Second last fight, interim flyweight title, Moreno versus Kai Kara-France. France actually has the most likely event with decision here, and we saw in his last fight against Askar Askarov that he can defend a submission well, and Moreno's most likely event is the submission. So I wouldn't count out France here either. It might be worth a bet on his money line. It seems like he's very driven and he really wants this. Moreno's coming off a loss against Figueiredo. When we're looking at their long-term profitable bets, definitely going to have to take a look at Moreno's submission. But I will Kai Kara-France, when he gets finished, it's most likely by submission. So definitely a chance there. But if Askarov couldn't finish him, I think Moreno might be in tough as well. France had really good submission defense in that last fight. And we'll also be looking at Moreno decision. And with France, we know that he is capable of getting the knockout. There is some slight profitability on that. So we'll be looking at both if they're going to finish the fight in the last 3 rounds, 3, 4, and 5. Otherwise, definitely have to bet France decision and Moreno decision. And last fight, we got the rematch. Amanda Nunes sitting at around -250, Pena around 225. When we're looking at their most likely events, we do have Nunes KO as the most likely, and Pena's submission is her most likely. Hard to say what's going to happen with this fight. Does Nunes rebound or does Pena have her number? If you're looking at the current money line odds and the history of it, Pena is still a value bet here. When we're looking at their long-term profitable numbers, Pena, we're going to be looking at her most likely event, which is the submission, and probably, I don't think this fight's going to go the distance. I think somebody's going to go down, whether it's submission or KO. I'm going to be looking at rounds 2, 3, and 4 for Pena. With Nunes, the KO is currently at plus 130. I will say in her money line range, taking her KO is just not a profitable bet. So personally, I'm going to be looking at submission. It's around plus 700 now, the last I checked. And who knows, maybe she'll want to get Pena back for that submission loss that she had. So I think both of these girls by submission is a good bet. With Nunes, however, when she finishes a fight, it's usually in the first round. So with Pena, I'll probably be looking at rounds 2, 3, and 4. Nunes 1, 2, and 3. So yeah, that's it for this card. If you guys are interested in this data and you want access to my full database, currently have nearly 1,000 fights in the UFC. You can use this as a tool to look at history of the line and see how fights played out when bookies are setting the line at a certain price, and you can see what bets are profitable. I definitely recommend it as a tool to use if you're more focused on the data side of things. So yeah, thanks for checking out my page, and good luck on your bets.